A scenario of an online game is shown in which several commands are displayed. The game is about dungeon break and shows that upon success in the prevention of the dungeon break, a reward in the form of a real universe will be presented. Soon a large portal is opened and light of great intensity pours out of it. Viscous monsters then start ushering out of it with bright red eyes and huge twin blade axes. Soon the protagonist appears carrying a weapon along with a comrade. The monsters growl ferociously when they see him and start to approach him for an attack. The comrade warns her master that things are going to be very chaotic that day, but the master shrugs her off by saying that he has faith. Soon a message appears that combo gacha will begin and Liu Shan's luck and the saintess's blessing have been detected. Soon he collides his weapon with some power and then a powerful illusion is created behind him. The boy smiles and says that Zhang Fei is here with a lion's roar. This actually weakens the attackers and the boy fights them off single-handedly. When more monsters appear, then the crushing tiger cyclone bullet attack technique is activated, and a powerful whirlpool is created which emits rocks and stones at a very high speed. While his fellow students are into outdoor games like playing football, for instance, Jin Jiangdo is into comics and novels, and is so obsessed with them that he wants to become one of their characters. One day he became so addicted to a game, but then only he is able to secure the second position as always as a pro gamer. On February 2nd, 2022, something bizarre happens. Real world becomes more like the gaming world and dungeons are formed all over the city. Magical vicious creatures start pouring in, and in order to fight them off, strange people carrying swords and axes also emerge. Those strange people are called mana users. In the current situation, mana users are given more limelight than any other celebrity or sportsperson. Jin is also in awe of one of such mana heroes as he also wants to become like him. He vows that one day he would be a mana user as well. 8 years pass away and Jin's dream is completely crushed. He goes into depression and continuous drinking. He still hasn't been able to fulfill the requirements of being a perfect mana user. He crashes and bangs his head and calls himself a moron. He says that he must come out of the fantasies as he wasn't made to be one of them. When he enters his apartment, he finds a strange girl waiting for him. She's an agent from the universe Winry Makina. She tells him that he has received a miracle and she has come to bestow upon him his prized gift. Jin is all drunk and confused as he feels everything is either a part of a cult or a scam. The girl tells him that he's the second to ever awaken level 3 communication since the beginning of the universe. The girl then touches him and grants him a skill. She grants him skills of observation, status window, tolerance, integration, and info gacha. Jin hears someone calling him the first miracle and guides him that if he has questions, he must use the status window. When Jin clicks on the info gacha button on the status window, a strange creature appears and drops a golden capsule on his hand. When he opens the capsule, a note drops which tells him about the next lottery date and the winning lottery numbers. One day before, guild leader Choi guides all the gamers including Jin how to compete with the dungeon guilds in order to obtain mana stones. He urges them to fight as the competition would be really fierce this time. He then lauds Jin for being a competitive dungeon explorer, and because of him, their team would be contracted for the recently discovered dungeon. It turns out that Jin is very popular among guilds and that famous guilds offer large sums of money just to hire him. However, one of his competitors, Joe, declares him a pretty salesperson who goes around having drinks with the famous guild leaders. Cho chides him, but he says that he is more efficient than Jin as he goes into those dungeons all by himself, risking her life. Choi tells her that hunting is not the only thing the guild needs to function. Choi apologizes to Jin for Joe's behavior and pays him a handsome amount because he landed the contract with their guild. Jin is elated as his lifelong dream of becoming a mana user has been fulfilled. He has won the Awakened fee of $300,000. Awakened is a magical tool that turns normal people into mana users and also calculates their skill levels. One by one the mana users go and get their talents measured. The Awakened is also called a lucky draw because even if you have a high number of talents and you're suitable for combat, you are all set. After that, even if you get 3 skills, your level goes up. However, if those skills are not up to the mark, you will end up having bad skills or talents. When Jin's apprentice Seo Yoon enters the Awakened, she scores the mana level of 27 and has 11 talents, which is quite outrageous for a beginner. She is declared the best rising star. Then when Jin enters the machine, all confident, he is ordered to place both his hands on the famous Odin's Eye for 10 minutes. But the poor guy received the mana level of 7 with a mere 3 talents and therefore couldn't be a part of the combat. Back to the present, Jin wonders about the identity of the lady who gave him those skills, but he has acquired the gacha info skills which would definitely signal him about the future. However, the creature warns Jin that the gacha will cost 1 mana per try, since he had 7 manas currently, so makes 5 attempts. To his dismay, all predictions he got were useless. Jin then tries to check its current status, and to his dismay, he has only 1 mana left. He wonders if all this is happening real time. He then looks at his mana watch and ponders that the watch will only show the changed stats after it receives an update from the Awakened. So if Jin uses the status window skill to know what his stats are in real time while he's raiding the dungeon, it could help in determining the strategy he should use. This could be such a benefit to him. Now Jin could recover his mana in 24 hours, but he could only have 7, so even if he had a skill, he wouldn't be able to use it that much. Also, he wouldn't be able to acquire the required number of gacha. But still, he's thankful that he has acquired such a great skill and he could gradually increase his mana capacity. Suddenly, the gacha creature drops a crystal-like object. The status window displays that super rare information has been disclosed. The information is that on April 14, 2030, at 5-7 hours, a dungeon named Treasure Mole Cave will appear in the area of Mount Gwanak. So Jin sets out on his quest and keeps on walking and walking. He reaches his destination and waits until it's 5:07 hours. And exactly at that time, a portal to the dungeon appears, proving the authenticity of the gacha information. The dungeon is not a normal one but a treasure dungeon. Until now there are only 2 known treasure dungeons. One is the Treasure Dragon's Den in England and the Treasure Panda's Bamboo Forest in China. Normally the dungeons aren't named because they disappear as soon as they are raided. But then there are certain dungeons that are named even after they get disappeared. Firstly, those that demolish the whole area, and secondly, those where a legendary item is discovered. Jin is hoping that he gets his hands on a legendary weapon comparable to what the Southeast Asian players are using. The treasure dungeon doesn't have monsters and you have to pass tests in order to get hands on with your required item. Jin has an advantage if there are no monsters, otherwise he would die helplessly. So he takes the gamble and plunges inside the dungeon portal. Jin uses his observation skills to trail the whole place. He discovers a hidden rock wall that has been imbibed with illusionary magic. He then reaches the door and opens it and finds a bunch of dwarves welcoming him and calling him a weak challenger but talented one, as he was able to break the illusion magic. The dwarves congratulate him for passing the first test. Jin wonders if they are the moles of the dungeons. A dwarf named Giz says that for the second test, Jin has to fight him. If Jin beats him, then he would be rewarded and will be released from there. However, even if Jin loses, he would still be released. Giz tells him that there were 4 others who were kicked out before him. The other dwarves make fun of Jin's naivety. Giz tells him that the person who came before him suddenly attacked him with a knife. Giz calls the human race really uncivilized because according to him they have no common sense. The dwarf calls fighting spar, so he says it has become really boring sparring with humans as they get defeated after 1 blow only. This time he says they would fight in a different way that would be mutually beneficial. Jin asks him why does he bring the uncivilized human race over here. He says it's because of the pact they made, which restricts your actions in order to acquire greater power that could lead to death if broken. Giz then shows him an invention that the 7 intelligent dwarves developed by themselves. To his muse, Jin finds a TV and a console that Giz was displaying so proudly. Giz says that they would battle by playing a game. Jin is worried because even though he is a pro gamer, what are the chances he would win the game he had never played before? The game starts and Jin gives him some expert advice. However, Giz refuses to accept help as he thinks Jin is a commoner, and how would he know about games because at that time technology was almost nil. Giz shows him the controls of the game. After a while, Jin realizes that the game is very much similar to the one called Legend of Legends and he played it all the time. After the explanation, Giz offers some practice time but Jin refuses and wants to play the game right away. Soon Jin's talent game soars and rises all his stats by 100%. Jin plays like an expert and mocks the dwarves that it should be them who should give up. Jin defeats Giz, who's also very shocked as he has never even won once. He then asks for his reward from the dwarves' treasure, which Giz tries to dodge frantically. The other dwarves want to fight him as well but Jin shoves them off and says that he doesn't want to waste time anymore. But the dwarves insist that if he beats them all then they would give him something exclusive. However, Jin beats them off easily. Giz then analyzes him and mocks him with such a low level of mana how he was able to enter the dungeon. Giz is then thoroughly and gets his analysis checked by his fellow dwarf. Jin's communication level is 3, which nearly gives the dwarves a heart attack. Giz then advises him that if Jin hones his talents and skills for generations he could easily rise up to level 2. However, level 3 is one whole dimension. For example, if Jin has swordsmanship level 3, it would be the root of all swordsmanship. Giz says that it's all about building concepts. Giz says that he would do something to fix up Jin's stats but level 3 is way too much for him to fix, so his colleague Mikhail would best deal with the circumstances. Mikhail could see the future, so he would figure out how Jin would fight and then would make the best equipment for him. So all the dwarves get in the workshop and ask Jin to wait outside, as if he went inside he would melt instantly. After a while, they come out and hand him a wristband. Jin is disappointed to see an ordinary band, so he comments that maybe the elves worked too fast to create something useless or maybe pulled something out of the storage. The little guy is furious and says that if he doesn't want it, he can give it back. Taken aback, Jin quickly wears the wristband. Jin refrained to ask further questions from them. Mikhail then hands him a bag full of exotic jewels and says that he would be watching level 3 live, so this was a sightseeing fee. When Jin opens the bag, he gasps as those jewels are mana jewels. Soon Giz teleports Jin out of the dungeon and back to Gwanek Mountain. It seems like a dream to Jin, but the wristband and the burning bump are proof that what he went through was real. Because of the band, his stats get boosted. He wonders how the band is stronger than the world-famous swords. However, it has the characteristic to change its form into any weapon. But Jin has no combat-related talent. He decides to use Info Gacha with his remaining 5 mana. He tries 5 attempts but in vain, all reveal useless information. The next day when Jin enters his guild, it appears empty. Even Seiyun is on a break today. Choi informs him that after 6 days there would be an expedition. Jin realizes that Choi purposefully distanced him from that rascal, Joy. If it were another guild, Jin would have been kicked out for coming out blank as a mana user, but Choi has always been considerate. He also asks Jin if he would participate in the expedition, and Jin readily agrees to it. He then playfully mocks Jin about the golden bracelet, to which Jin replies he got it from someone. Jin realizes the expedition would be a good opportunity to test the king of all weapons. The day of the expedition arrives and Jin is also included and is a team member. Choi asks Jin to check with the Analyzer, a magical tool that gives accurate information about a dungeon. He wants Jin to check whether the information seeker Jeong has given is in line. Jin says that the dungeon is a D-rank destruction 1 for less than 10 people. Choi tells his team that the mission of this dungeon would be to collect mana stones. Meanwhile, Jo teases Jin for being back at work even after getting a menial talent for awakening. Choi then names the total 6 combat squad members. Choi adds that previously they entered a C-rank dungeon with more than what was needed previously. In that expedition, 2 of the B ranks died and only Jo survived with the 2 other C ranks. So he warns them that safety is their priority, so they all must obey their captain Jo's orders. Also, they must never let their guard down. The squad enters the dungeon and they're attacked by lizardmen. However, Jo beats one of them with ease with his weapon. It is learned that Jo is in a rank who's very capable. After pinning the monster down, Jo asks Seo-yoon to have the kill and then he orders Jin to collect all the mana stones that come out of the corpses. Seo offers that since she is the youngest she must collect them. However, Jo shuns her by saying that once a squad enters a dungeon, all its members are considered equal. However, Jin readily agrees to perform the task. Seo confronts Jo to let Jin have the last hits as she has already taken 2 monsters. Jo then compares Seo's 27 mana with Jin's 7 mana and tells him that it is for the guild's future that Seo must have the hits. All the squad members dislike Jo thoroughly from the very beginning since he's rude and haughty. The members think that all Jo thinks is about personal gains and he's not teaching newbies anything, so they plan to file a complaint against him once they're out. Jin's continuously thinking what Jo's scheming mind is cooking and why did he give Seo 10% of the experience points she needs. Soon they enter the boss Lizardman's office, who appears to be as ferocious as ever. However, Jo kills the boss in one powerful strike and all the members are amazed. Meanwhile, the squad members are relieved that the battle is over. One of the members confronts Jo for giving all the points to Seo as the newbies also want some points to level up, and team leader Jin must have the last hit on the boss. Jo says that he can't let them out of the dungeon. With that, he stabs his sword into that confronting member. The other members are shocked at Jo's brutally killing that member. He then kills all of them except Seo and Jin. Before Jin could understand anything, he uses his observation skills to find out that Jo's stats rise abnormally with 69 mana, and the skill of Corpse Plunderer. Jin calls him a murderer villain, a user that has committed the crime of hunting other users. In the previous expedition of the C-rank dungeon, he was the one who killed the B-rank members. He also plans to kill Seo in order to acquire her amazing capabilities. As soon as he's about to attack Jin, Jin's magical wristband acts up, turns into a mighty sword, and blocks Jo's attack. Seo also comes to help but Jo swats her away and asks her to wait for her turn. Jin is really worried because the skill gap is so great that he can't possibly win from Jo. Jin uses his observation skill on Seo and finds out that she has leveled up to level 2. Jin asks Seo to use up her mana like when she's using her magical shield. Soon she forms a magical shield around them. Jo tries his level best to break the shield with his menacing sword, and poor Seo finds it hard to persist for longer. Meanwhile, Jin gathers up to kill the boss lizard so that they could leave the dungeon. When Jo learns this, he's really furious and tries his level best to weaken the shield. He's successful in doing so, but till then Jin has already stabbed the boss with his sword. However, Jo says menacingly that they can't leave the dungeon immediately after killing the boss. They have to wait for 10 to 30 minutes afterward. Jin retorts triumphantly that Joe miscalculated as he was aiming for a level up. Soon a status window appears and shows that Jin has reached level 2 and has acquired another skill of connection gacha. The skill would help him to load a skill of any random person in the true universe. He uses one connection gacha and receives a card. While looking at the card, Jin smiles jubilantly and says that now it's Joe's turn to suffer. Soon there is bright light and Jin transforms superficially, which is unbelievable to Joe. Joe decides to end Jin's life before anything happens to him. However, whatever moves he makes in order to ambush Jin, Jin successfully swats them away. Joe then uses a very advanced technique, Heavenly Halberd, which frets Jin away. Jin quickly opens his status window and checks that the skills he has acquired are of a person named Lu Bufengxian, a Chinese military general and warlord. He also acquires a double-blade humongous axe as a weapon. However, it's very difficult for Jin to use it as he doesn't know how tightly he should grasp it or at which angle he should stab, or how fast he should swing it. But strangely his body knows how to use that weapon. It seems as if Lubu has taken over him. That's why the skill is called Connection Gacha. However, Joe still mocks him about how low his skill and talent are. However, he gets intimidated by Jin's current avatar. He uses his ultimate move, which is Pinpoint Thrust, which according to him will certainly finish off Jin. He lashes forward with his sword at a distance that even an O or an S rank couldn't dodge. But very easily Jin creates a barrier around him that breaks Joe's most powerful sword, and then very easily he chops Joe off. Jin thinks that even in a rank like Joe isn't a match for him, so finally he comes to the conclusion that he is an SS rank. He postpones finding out more about Connection Gacha till later and lunges forward to the unconscious Soyun. He tries to wake her up but in vain. Suddenly a floating figure like Genie appears on his side and tells Jin that since Seo has used excessive internal energy, that's why she's showing signs of Kai Berserk. However, Jin nearly got a heart attack from such a sudden intervention. However, the genie says that Jin was the one who summoned him to the current era. So basically the genie is actually Lubu Nem or Fengxian. Lubu tells him to try infusing internal energy into the life gateway pressure point of Seo. By doing this, Seo regains consciousness and Lubu tells Jin all she needs is a lot of rest. Lubu thanks Jin for getting him out of that boring place. Soon Lubu has to leave because his summon time is up. He hopes that Jin calls him next time as well. However, Jin tells him that it's all luck. Jin receives rewards for achieving the highest possible target. As a reward, part of the abilities has remained in the user's body, which automatically put his stats up. Meanwhile, Choi is waiting at the opening of the dungeon portal for his team to return. Soon Jin appears carrying an unconscious Seo. Choi inquires about others, but then by looking at their conditions quickly summon medical help. However, Jin says that he has to report something to Choi urgently. Jin reveals to Choi that Joe was a murderous villain, and for evidence, he provides him with a tape from a dungeon camera from squad member Jiang Yuna, who participated as a supporter. Choi is full of rage and hatred when he watches the videotape, and blames himself for not being able to see clearly as he always trusted Joe to be in a rank. However, Jin assures him that nobody knew the reality about Joe as he hid his identity very cleverly this whole time. Choi says that it looks like Joe had a skill for hunting the team members and absorbing their skills and talents, and unfortunately deaths caused in previous expeditions were also a result of Joe's treachery. Jin says that Joe used to kill all he wanted and then used to hide anything suspicious inside the dungeon. This was all to remove any evidence against him. Then Choi asked him how Joe got killed. Now Jin is really puzzled because although he trusts Choi more than himself, still if he knew about the magical wristband, then everyone around Jin and Jin himself would get into trouble. So makes up a story that the Lizardmen warrior which they took down mutated. Then Jin tells him his make-believe story that when Joe tried to ambush the Lizardmen's boss, it used one of the skills of those who have entered the dungeon. However, it's unbelievable, for Choi says that even if the D-rank dungeon boss acquired a skill like that, it would have become very hard for it to defeat Joe. He guesses that the skill it acquired could be Lee Jinsu's stealth, and Jin agrees readily. Jin adds that the boss sneaked behind Joe and attacked him, while he was busy fighting with Seo and Jin. Although Joe cut off its head immediately, still he suffered a fatal injury. Joe says that karma because Joe died of the skill of the person he killed earlier. With that, he orders Jin to take good rest and bids farewell. Jin first visits Seo at the hospital and then reaches home. As he lies down, he opens the status window and he sees the button Connection Gacha. When he clicks on the arrow of the info gacha, an information box having many categories appear. He sees a list of all the mana users he has met before. Among them are the picture of Lu Bufengxian and the cost of summoning him 99 mana. The other two cards were of the dwarves Giz, whose price is 347 mana, and Mikil, whose price is 361 mana. Jin ponders that if that's the price to summon them, then a human would never have that much mana to summon them. So basically whoever Jin would meet personally, his or her name would be automatically registered in that virtual album. so the true nature of this ability is to load a unique skill or talent for the various situations he might need. So he has to keep on meeting low-level but good mana users. The last picture is of Winry Makina, the strange woman that appeared to give him the miracle. He realizes that the immediate thing he has to do is to raise his mana capacity. For that he has to either level up or try his luck with Connection Gacha. He puts off the Connection Gacha for the next day as he still doesn't possess enough mana. Then he summons Info Gacha and as usual, fails miserably to find something useful. Then the next day he uses the Connection Gacha and this time he summons Liu Sham, the person who ruled the Han Dynasty. A genie-like creature who looks more like a cartoon character appears and calls himself the Great Liu Sham to Jin's muse. So when Jin mocks Liu, he is hurt and says that one shouldn't look down upon the other's capability. However, Jin mocks back by saying that when he will return to his normal self. When Liu shouts with rage to look at his talents, Jin finds out that he has a good luck level 2, which means Liu has a talent for good luck only to Jin's dismay. In the past, Liu Shan's good luck was not just being him, a bearer of good luck, but he survived a ferocious battle of Changbin and being surrounded by an army of Cao Cao. As a son of Liu Bei, he was an imperial prince and emperor. He was always well fed and had a good life no matter what happened. At present, Jin ponders how simply good luck would be of use in a dungeon fighting. Unable to comprehend, Jin summons Info Gacha and soon a golden capsule falls, and soon Jin realizes graciously that it is all because of his good luck charm, Sir Liu Sham. Soon the capsule reveals that on July 30th, 2030, a dungeon will form on a hill near Chiorwan County, and it would be possible to win a skill stone for a reward. July 30th is about 3 months away. But still, Jin can't help having relishing thoughts about the type of stone as that would earn millions for him. However, Jin asks Liu why he is giving Jin so much goodwill, although Jin forced him out of his resting place. Liu replies that he is not the real Liu Shan that existed in the real universe. He's just a fake personality created by compiling the information recorded in the real universe. Jin realizes that it's not only the abilities but the information on the figure's personality is also loaded and used to create an individual that thinks and speaks for themselves. Liu says that since Jin is his creator, so how is it possible for him not to provide Jin with goodwill? Liu adds that even if he calls someone different, that person would be able to help Jin to the best of his abilities. Soon, it's time for Liu to leave as his job is complete. He bids farewell to Jin and vanishes. Meanwhile, guild leader Choi decided to disband his Justice Guild as most of his squad members have died and so it has become impossible for him to clear the dungeons. Still, he tried recruiting new users but their prices have skyrocketed due to the user bubble. Also, some rumors are circulating that many deaths have occurred in Choi's guild in a short span of time, and this has made it impossible for the guild to get new recruits. All the team members including Jin are upset and Jin vows that he would always be a user. Choi presents him with an application form for the South Korean Users Association. Choi wants Jin to get admitted to this new education facility as soon as possible. However, he is not sure about Seo Yoon and whether she wants to continue as a user. Choi then discloses to Jin that another forged mana watch has been found in Joe's belongings, depicting that he was a member of another guild as well called the Karma Guild, which is the largest multinational guild in the world. The leader is called the cult leader and the members don't hesitate to become villains for the sake of their cult leader. Choi asks Jin to beware of those fanatic pseudos as they may be on the lookout for Jin after Joe's demise. Soon they both part on good terms. The next day he again rolls out the Connection Gacha and prays that a miracle happens. Jin is standing on the grounds of the Magnificent Academy for Users Association. He updated his mana watch for the one required to get admitted at the Awaker. It's because of the King of the Armshes wearing that his stats are unbelievably high for a level 2. Also thanks to the gold card he had rolled in the Connection Gacha. At that time, Bradamante, one of the 12 Knights of Charlemagne, appeared to assist Jin. At present, Jin is pleasantly surprised to see Seo Yoon all healthy and hearty at the academy. Jin thinks that Seo is a little suspicious of him since he figured out what skills she possessed before she updated her mana watch. However, Seo proves him wrong and pretends that she hasn't noticed anything strange. Jin considers her to be more adult than him and considers himself no match for her. Next, at the Users Academy, Jin is taught how to enter a dungeon, and for that, they must get compulsory education for at least 1 month. Users part of a guild receive education from their respective guilds, and those not part of any guild receive it in an academy authorized by the nation. However, applicants prefer the individual training that the guild provides over the academy that teaches several students all at once. Another reason why people avoid the academy is the admission test because lots of people take the test. Soon Jin and Seo also sit for the test invigilated by a B rank. The first test is hitting sandbags as hard as one could and the individual scoring over 30 passes the test. A burly student brags that scoring 30 is a piece of cake for him. However, when he hits the bag, he is so overpowered that he is able to score a mere 27. The guy is furious and says that the machine must be broken. but then the invigilator punches it so hard and receives a grand 88 to everybody's surprise. Many students try but they fail miserably. When it's Seo's turn, she receives a 67 to Jin's amazement. The B-rank invigilator is so much impressed with Seo that she couldn't help checking her stats, and when she learns about them she exclaims that with stats like these, the greatest guilds of the countries would be fighting over her, so then why did she enter the academy? Soon it's Jin's turn and he freezes with fright. He activates his wristband which updates his stats by 100%. He hits the sandbag so hard that the poor thing smashed into pieces, but Jin scored a whopping 91 points. Everyone is stunned as there is only a difference of 6 points between Jin and the academy's best scorer. Seo thinks that she's absolutely correct. Jin is hiding something from her. Meanwhile, at Choi's Justice Guild, many guild leaders approach him to find out about Seo. However, he tells them that since she has suffered an injury, so she is still recuperating at the academy. However, one of the leaders orders someone to send the scouts to the academy. Then the academy is shown where it is said that the whole education term period is about 1 month. In the first week, dungeon and monster dealing are taught. In the second week, weapons training is given. In the third week, outlines to take measures during emergency situations are taught. In the last week, a joint tactical training is given. On the last day of the academy, a test to determine your graduation takes place. Seo is really fretting over her graduation test and whether she'll pass or not. However, she is surprised that Jin is not the least worried about the test. She is so lost in her thoughts that she jumps when someone calls her name. It is someone from Orient Guild who offers her to join. Seo refuses to join and runs away as fast as she could. She hides behind a tall pillar thinking that nobody would be able to spot her. However, a person from Ram's guild readily spots her and approaches her to join. Poor Seo runs for her life. Then it is shown that many guild leaders follow her, but Seo refuses everyone and runs away. She slips inside the academy and sighs in relief because no outsiders are allowed in the academy. While having lunch with Jin, she tells him how fed up she is with them as the scouts follow her to the training room the previous day. Jin says that her popularity is increasing day by day and many guild leaders would approach her, so why doesn't she join a suitable guild? Seo replies that she wants to live her life according to her own free will. Meanwhile, Seo is about to ask Jin out but is rudely interrupted by another fellow student who calls Jin Hyung Nim. His own name is Kang and challenges Jin to spar with him. Jin says that he doesn't mock spars, but Kang assures him that nobody gets hurt in Mana Virtual. Mana Virtual is a device made out of magical engineering that creates an avatar that's the same as your real body in a virtual space and allows people to spar without worrying if you're in a game. However, Jin refrains to stay away from the Mana Virtual because due to it, his game talents will activate and his stats will double, then he'll feel frustrated by his real stats. Seo then offers Kang to spar with her. Kang is surprised because whenever he used to offer her for spar, she always refused. However, Seo pinned him down in no time. Soon both get into a ferocious virtual fight. During the fight, Jin notices that although Seo's attacks are marvelous, however, Kang's endurance to tank all those blows is abnormal as well. Meanwhile, the teacher has high expectations from Jin for the graduation test the next day. The teacher thinks about a student who appeared 3 years ago and had the highest number of talents, 13. He was the one who entered the academy after refusing offers from all the guilds. After graduating, he became the 9th SS user. The day of the final test appears and the final test is to clear an E-rank dungeon. The teacher says that as soon as this dungeon is cleared, they would be reborn as true users that have the right to enter the dungeons. The teacher adds that a B-rank instructor would go along with the students for their safety. However, as always, it's forbidden to let their guard down. Poor Seo is having a panic attack due to her previous dungeon expedition. She is having hallucinations of Joe attacking her again and again. However, Jin assures her that she would return safely. Kang also encourages her to clear up the dungeon in Flash. The students are divided into groups A and B. Firstly, Group A enters, which includes Seo. After a while, a signal emerges that the dungeon has been cleared. Team along with Seo appears, all safe and sound. Now it's Group B's turn to enter the dungeon. Both Kang and Jin enter the dungeon, this time along with their teacher. Seo asks him to return safely. They all enter the dungeon and the teacher notices their reaction time. She says that Jin's reaction time was the quickest, so he's awarded a plus point. The dungeon is of the annihilation type. Jin asks his team to follow the textbook and enter square information. The teacher thinks that Jin is an extraordinary student whose enthusiasm and aptitude are greater than anyone else. However, those qualities aren't supported by their talents. Soon an orc is sighted. Jin orders Kang to use his shield, as that could easily block the orc. Soon another member also blocks the monster with his shield, while Jin attacks the monster with his weapon and kills it with ease. The teacher is a little suspicious as she thinks that Kang could have easily blocked the monster with his shield. However, it didn't happen because the monster was stronger than expected. The teacher feels that this E-rank dungeon is closer to D-rank dungeon. Soon more green monsters attack them and Jin orders the archers to take their positions. Soon Kang also blocks them with his shield and thwacks them down. Meanwhile, Jin and a few others keep on stabbing the pinned down monsters. The teacher heaves a sigh of relief and thinks she was worried about nothing. Outside the dungeon, it is seen that the dungeon has been traded off with a seeker from another guild. The dungeon has been changed by the treacherous Karma Guild through a student who was trying to get a dungeon for himself. Basically, they have been scammed about the information on this so-called E-rank dungeon. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the team reaches the boss room. While opening the humongous doors, Jin has a horrifying feeling of something that is terribly wrong. They see a huge-sized monster waiting for them and the teacher realizes that there has been a terrible mistake. She declares it an emergency situation and stops the test immediately. The dungeon is not an E-type, but an A-rank, boss-type dungeon. Soon the opening of the dungeon is sealed by the Korean Users Association, and the perpetrator is pinned down and imprisoned. However, when Karma Guild is contacted, even they don't know where the culprit seeker went, and the incident is an unfortunate circumstance. The Users Association team leader and S-class holder, Sang-hui, is the main investigation officer. She says that the dungeon is so dangerous that even the B-rank instructor is no match for it. She is referring to the teacher who went with Group B. She says that the dungeon is an A-rank boss type 1, so its boss could be compared to S-rank, Annihilation type boss, or even stronger. Seo fretfully asks Sang-hui if there was any way to rescue the insiders. The officer says that unfortunately there is no way, as long as the people inside the dungeon. There is no way for them to intrude in the middle until they all die. The best they can do is to take revenge for their deaths. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the bloody boss is ready to pounce on one team member when suddenly, the teacher puts a stop to him by saying mesmerize and tangle. This actually ties the big green giant by numerous red ropes. The teacher says that from now onward she will take charge of the expedition. She says that while she has captured him, the others should try placing as many blows as they could. However, the students panic after seeing the horrendous boss and think about how they could possibly take down a thing so powerful as that. Taking the opportunity, the boss breaks free from the ropes. To the teacher's horror, she says if they're going to panic at this rate, they would all definitely die. However, Jin comes forward and attacks the giant with a mighty sword. A few minutes ago, when the boss was breaking free and was about to attack his fellows, Jin comes to the decision that at this time he cannot hide his strength. He uses Info Gacha, and luckily Liu Shan appears, who's the bearer of good fortune. Then he summons Connection Gacha, and by sheer luck, a diamond card appears in front of him and then he gets the mightiest sword ever. With that, he attacks the boss in no time. The teacher is perplexed and asks Jin what has actually happened. Jin replies that nowadays luck is usually on his side. It turns out that Jin has been connected to a great German hero named Siegfried, who was known as the great dragon slayer of his times and who slayed the evil dragon named Fafnir. However, when he first attacked the boss blocked it, making Jin wonder what rank he was actually in. Through observation technique, he learned the boss's level was 82, and that was on the high end of the S-ranked monsters. Soon a fierce battle between the boss and Jin begins. Jin mocks him by saying, "Let's see how an S-rank monster fights with an SS rank fighter." The monster sways his twin blade axe over Jin again and again, which the latter dodges successfully every time. The teacher and his other fellows are frightfully surprised by seeing Jin so expertly tackling the boss. Finally, Jin decides to end this battle by plunging his sword into the monster's heart. The monster falls down with a loud thud and Siegfried congratulates Jin for such a marvelous display of bravery. However, Jin thanks him back. All his fellow beings come running to him and express their gratitude that if it weren't for the teacher and Jin, they would have been surely dead. The teacher also congratulates Jin for his hard work and immense display of skill that she calls him an SSI. However, the boss isn't dead yet and attacks Jin from behind. But Kang sees his attack and shouts at Jin to dodge it. However, the boss throws Kang instead away with a loud thud. Angrily, Jin tries to behead the boss, but the boss blocks his sword. He then asks the teacher if blocking was also one of the skills of an orc. The teacher replies that the orc lord usually uses a war cry to send his opponent into confusion, and then engages with their enemy in hand-to-hand combat. The teacher says that this is not their pattern of fighting. The teacher says that now she thinks she knows what's going on. It is one of the rare situations when the monster, who is on the verge of death, receives a new skill. This whole scenario is called mutation. All the students along with the instructors feel that they are unable to move their bodies. The teacher says that this is a war cry. Jin tries to attack the monster with his sword, but the monster dodges him easily. The monster is about to pound him with his fist when Siegfried's voice warns him and Jin uses his sword to block the attack. Siegfried tells him that according to him the skill the monster possesses is the Dragon Blood Awakening. Siegfried says that it's the ability he gained after defeating the evil dragon Fafnir and drinking its blood. He adds that it's the technique that renders all the attacks temporarily useless and heals all of the user's injuries if the user goes to a near-death situation. It also increases the user's stats temporarily. The boss attacks Jin again and Siegfried warns him that his time on Earth is about to replenish. He advises Jin to run away until the Dragon Blood Awakening is over. Soon Jin feels that the sword got heavier and the monster also realizes that Jin got weaker. The other fellows also cannot do anything and all of Jin's mana is finished, so he cannot use connection gacha. When the green monster lunges forward, poor Jin thinks if he would die like this. Jin thinks that now he has started to feel like the mana user he always wanted to be, and he promised Seo that he would return safe and sound, so should he give in so readily. Jin vows that he won't die so easily, so musters up all his strength and pulls up. Destiny also helps as the king of all arms. The wristband succeeds in creating the ancient weapon perfectly, and Jin is able to use all the abilities of the ancient weapon. The ancient weapon he has summoned is the Dragon Killer Sword, Bamung. It signals that dragon blood has been detected in the boss. It also says that when facing dragon blood, the user's strength will increase by 1000%. With 2 or 3 strikes, finally, Jin is able to pin the green monster down, and his stats go up rapidly. The King of All Arms then heals all Jin's injuries as it has the healing capability as well. A status window appears that Jin has been able to load the highest possible target, and a part of the target's abilities have been retained in the user's body. This means Jin has automatically acquired the skill of Dragon Blood Awakening. Jin is elated and says that it was only possible to increase stats after the gold name card. Jin thinks that the dragon's skill is second to getting a new life. Meanwhile, his fellows and his instructor look a little perplexed, and Jin is relieved to see Kang all safe and sound. Kang asks Jin if he is going to kill all of them, as he is a high-rank user and has kept his identity hidden. Jin barks who actually kill innocent people. Jin explains that he is not a high-level user who has kept his identity secret. Until he entered the dungeon, he was a level 2 user. Jin says that he received his first skill as a special one, though he cannot reveal that skill. Still, Kang is doubtful of Jin's immense talents. Meanwhile, the agents are waiting for Team B outside the dungeon portal. One of them says that if they went into hiding because they are scared of the monster for 30 days, then a dungeon break will take place and all the monsters will break loose in the open. One of them also offers to close the dungeon, but Shangwi says that since Sancti is there in the dungeon, there shouldn't be any issue. He's a guy that does everything he can for the mission that has been assigned to him. He would still challenge a dungeon, even if knew he couldn't clear it. Soon they see signs of someone coming from the dungeon. They all get prepared to avenge the arrivers. Soon the teacher and Team B come out all safe and sound, and the teacher announces, Team B dungeon is cleared. Shanghai asks the teacher how they were able to clear the rank boss type dungeon, to which the teacher points towards a weapon, which is the Orc Lord's War Axe. Shangwi is worried about what this extremely rare weapon doing here, as there are less than 10 such weapons in the whole of Korea. She then asks the teacher whether she defeated the Orc Lord. Just then Academy CEO emerges from behind and lauds the teacher for her bravery. Also says that whatever the teacher has collected belongs to the Academy. Suddenly Jin appears and tells the CEO that the axe belongs to him since he killed the orc. When the CEO tries to dominate Jin, Jin firstly tells him that he's not his subordinate. He also threatens the CEO to make a complaint against him for what catastrophe happened over here. The CEO apologizes but tells Jin not to lie. The teacher confirms that Jin is not lying. She says that he defeated Lord Orc and it was not her doing this time. The CEO still doesn't believe them by saying that a mere student cannot do this. Jin then reprimands the CEO that instead of checking out the spoils, he should be more concerned about those who barely survived. However, the adamant CEO says that they all came safe and sound, so there is no point. Shanghui, thoroughly embarrassed, orders her subordinates to seek urgent medical attention for the survivors, as they had been exposed to war cry, so there might be internal injuries. Meanwhile, the teacher narrates all the events that took place in the dungeon to Shanghui, how the mutation of the Lord Orc took place, how his body emitted crimson energy that recovered him from all the injuries, and how Jin split the orc's body into 2 in just 1 slash. The teacher says that when student Jin entered the dungeon, he was just carrying a spear, but when he was fighting against the Great Lord, his weapon changed into a great sword with a golden handle, and an azure jewel embedded in it. The teacher also says that the sword getting disappeared once the orc was killed. The teacher says that her guess is that Jin was probably using a mana consumption artifact. Shanghui asks whether Jin's skill or talent is artifact creation, just like America's SS rank White Smith has. Meanwhile, Jin opens his status window and is elated to find that he has gone 2 levels up with the expedition this time. However, his power leveling isn't much to talk about, so in order to level up, he has to enter as many dungeons as he could. However, there is no guarantee that he would be able to find out much about dungeons by using info gacha, and by himself, finding dungeons is also a tiresome task. While Jin's pondering, Sanghui and the teacher enter his hospital room. Sanghui first inquires about his health and then formally introduces herself to Jin. Sanghui then gives him an explanation for the former dungeon incident by saying that an academy salesperson was cheated by a dungeon scam. The whereabouts of the seeker who made the deal with him are currently unknown. Her guess is that the seeker belongs to the Karma Guild. However, there is no evidence that this is all Karma Guild's doing, and with the academy paying out all the expenses, there's a high chance that the incident will be closed like this without any investigation. The reason why Karma is the biggest suspect is that there has always been a tiff between the Karma Guild and the academy. Jin is a little relieved because he thought someone might be taking Joe's revenge. However, he couldn't help pondering that they're not even academy users, so how would it affect the academies by killing its few students? The teacher blames the whole incident on the academy and apologizes thoroughly to Jin. She also says that the current CEO would be stepping down. However, Jin graciously accepts the apology along with the compensation. Seeking the opportunity, Sanghui offers Jin to work for their country, which Jin refuses, as deep in his mind he has a past experience of being a military slave. However, Sanghui clears his misunderstanding that obligatory duties are for the users exempted to pay the 300 million won fee incurred from using the Awakened. But since Jin had already paid his one fee, so he was exempted from the obligatory duties. Plus, there are other benefits for the users hired by the country, as they would be able to use the country-run facilities for free. Also, he could enter the dungeons of his levels for free. In return, he has to clear the dungeons 4 times a month, with 70% of the spoils would be going to the country. However, Jin refuses to accept because of his secret gachas. He cannot be bounded by contracts. However, Sanghui makes another offer of an expedition request, that he has to clear the exponentially growing dungeons with all fees paid. All the agency asks is 30% of the magic stones collected from the dungeons. The second request sounds more favorable to Jin since he can't find stable dungeons all by himself. So he accepts the proposal, and the teacher asks him to attend the graduation ceremony. Sanghui asks Jin to sell him the Orc's war axe for a discounted price. Jin then signs the contract and gladly gives away the axe. Sanghui then tells him to arrive in 2 days at an E-rank destruction type dungeon. Sanghui then gives him a tour of the whole association. She first takes him to the training center where muscled men are doing various exercises. As soon as they see her, they all start training more vigorously, as Sanghui is a very strict team leader. Some of them work hard just to impress the beautiful and dazzling Sanghui. Sanghui then introduces Jin to everyone around the room. There is a person to whom Sanghui refers as Makni, who seems to be a little wary of Jin. Makni offers to have a face-off with Jin, and Jin feels that he just wants to show off to Sanghui how strong he is. Jin refuses and says that he doesn't like mock duels, and decides to walk off. However, Makni and others start making fun of him, and this ignites Jin and he accepts the mock duel. Sanghui says he doesn't have to do it because Makni is a crank while Jin is only an E rank. Jin says that Sanghui should be aware of whom she's dealing with and he'll take a chance to show what he has got. However, Sanghui feels that Jin lacks physical strength and his only strength is physical equipment according to the teacher. He might be able to win in real life, but it's a different story when it comes to mock duels in Mana Virtual. The game begins and a status window appears that all the stats would be doubled while playing the game. Somehow Makni reminded Jin of Joe, but he says that he would use this opportunity to learn something from the Orc Slayer. However, before Makni could show off his speed and kills, Jin decides to walk out of the game, informing Sanghui that it was enough of a tour for him. After he leaves, Sanghui berates Makni for being so careless. After a while, Jin decides to call Connection Gacha twice as he has more than 20 mana now. However, he still thinks the number of mana is insufficient to summon Liu Shan, the Fortune Bearer. However, instead of fretting over what he doesn't have, he decides to use as many Connection Gachas instead of Info Gachas, as much as he could because he could get rare and above guarantee after using 10 Gachas. Also in this way, his stats will slowly and gradually rise. When he uses the Connection Gacha, the blank card appears and Yance of the Chromal Kingdom is summoned, a world other than Earth. Jin is excited because this means he could load fantasy heroes like great magicians and swordmasters as well. He then loads the next gacha and with tough luck, another blank card appears. A blank card means any random personality could appear, so this time Liu Shan appears to his disappointed. Because Liu Shan was already in his album, so his 6 mana got wasted for nothing. However, the status window shows that he has successfully loaded the same character for the same time, and for a reward he gets a combo gacha. However, since Liu Shan's stats are good for nothing, so practically it did no good to Liu Shan's stats. Also, the talent level is still the same. However, the stats would increase exponentially as Liu Shan strengthens gradually. Lord Liu Shan explains that it's because of his good luck he has pulled out again. However, Jin is still unable to digest the fact and keeps on mocking him. Liu Shan, it's because of the connection developed between the two when they first met. With Jin's skill, the stronger the connection Jin has with a figure, the higher the chance for it to be pulled out. Jin finds the information realistic because whenever he used info gacha, he always managed to pull the information around him. And even when he summoned the 12 figures, one of them was out of the world while the other 11 belonged to the earth. Jin then checks his stat window again and finds that his stats increased as Liu's stats increased. Jin then selects Combo Gacha, and the window says that he can select 2 of the figures recorded previously in his album. Then the window makes a horrifying revelation that the figure having connections with both the selected figures will be randomly loaded. For example, if he selected Liu Bu and Liu Shan, so Liu Bei would be formed, and so on. But the Combo Gacha works for the narrow range of the selected figure's mana count. For example, Liu Shan has 4 manas while Liu Bu has 99 mana, so the combo is possible. However, with Giz who has 347 mana, the combo is not possible with Liu Shan. After a few days, Jin is standing in front of the E-rank Annihilation type dungeon. But before heading inside, Jin uses his observation skill for a quick check because last time he was scammed. The dungeon has goblins for a monster and a hobgoblin for a boss. A lump of mana stones is buried under the boss's room. After a thorough check, Jin enters the dungeon and a fleet of goblins attack him. However, Jin attacks them one by one with his spear. He finished off the goblins and in no time and his level go up. The goblins are so scared of him that they run for their lives. Soon the boss arrives, and with one blow Jin finishes him off. Although he's really surprised at how easy that expedition was, then he starts digging for the mana stones in the boss's room. He brings the lump of stones outside the dungeon. The agent is surprised because it hasn't been 2 hours and Jin cleared the dungeon so quickly. The poor guy is taken aback when an energetic Jin asks him whether there were other dungeons in that area. The guy refuses that there are no more dungeons managed by the association in this area. However, the guy shows him a website called ManaNet where people from different guilds form teams for various expeditions due to the rising number of dungeons. Jin is excited to find ManaNet and all he needs is to register with his Mana Watch's serial number and then connect. He tries to find a group nearby and finds one. To his surprise, they don't care about the rank and all they need is a porter. He decides to call the group, but to his disappointment, they have already recruited someone else. Jin then decides to put this away for some other time and hands over the mana stones to the agency worker. However, as per the contract, the spoils belong to Jin. He says that he could see the condition of the spoils as they have gone through primary processing, unlike the mana stones. The agency guy marvels at Jin's good luck, although Jin says it's all because of his observation skill. Meanwhile, in a training room, Jin exercises rigorously. There is a news flash on the gym's television that at 12 p.m. there was a dungeon outbreak outside Austin City. However, there were no casualties due to the prompt arrival of the users of the association. Jin ponders that earlier he was at the Austin City. However, if the dungeon broke at 12 p.m., then the mana leaking out from the dungeon should have reached its peak before the peak, so why Jin didn't feel a thing. Jin is then suspicious of the dungeon expedition advertisement posted earlier on ManaNet. But then what kind of crazy person would post a recruitment notice for a dungeon on the brink of breaking? When he heads out of the gym, he finds Liu Shan waiting for him. Liu asks him to pull out an info gacha, but Jin says he's short on mana due to his dungeon expedition. However, he does pull out, but nothing but trash comes out. Seems like Liu's good luck isn't working on info gacha that day. The capsule breaks and a notification appears that in 4 days an artificial dungeon break will occur in the Gangnam district in Seoul. This means that someone will deliberately try to break the dungeon instead of waiting for 30 days to pass. This clearly shows that the dungeon outbreak that morning was also deliberate, as there was no evacuation broadcast beforehand and even Jin didn't feel anything while being in that area. Jin suspects that the person he spoke to that morning is the main culprit. The information about the break was pulled because Jin made a short connection with that man on the phone. Jin thinks that he wouldn't last if he tried to stop the break on his own. But if he tries to spread that information, they'll try to find out how he got that information, and for this, he'll be tortured till death. Jin decides to be stronger in order to stop the break all by himself but decides to inform Shangui indirectly. Soon the window asks Jin to go on a quest in order to stop the outbreak with a timer of 10 hours 27 minutes. Now Jin understands why he was awarded the miracle in the first place. It is only through him universe can communicate to prevent changes in the future. Meanwhile, the Users Association is having an emergency meeting to discuss the 2 dungeon outbreaks in a span of 1 day. The problem is that there were no users around to prevent them as they were quite sudden. 2 users were killed and the cause of death was that a sword was stabbed in both cases. Meanwhile, Sang-hui is under great pressure so she decides to leave all the dungeons to Jin. Meanwhile, at the graduation ceremony, Jin is rewarded with awards and accolades for his outstanding grades and performance. Meanwhile, the status window keeps on flashing in front of Jin to prevent the dungeon outbreak. However, Jin couldn't miss his graduation because the academy has decided to refund all his fees. The teacher and Seo also congratulate him, and the latter presents him with a lucky charm. Booth Kang and Seo offer Jin to team up with them for future dungeon expeditions, but Jin refuses them both as he has other plans. Also, he thinks both of his friends are immature and doesn't want to put their lives in danger. He decides to conquer the dungeons by using his own strengths. 2 days later, Jin tries to look everywhere in Gangnam but is unable to find any dungeon. With a little try, he manages to find 3 dungeons. The first one is in a class on the road near Seongsu Bridge, a C-class dungeon at Non-Hyundong and D-class dungeon at Daechai-dong. The N C-class dungeons are already owned by guilds while the D-class dungeon is owned by the association, so it's impossible to clear the dungeons alone. However, if not cleared in time, there would be a huge outbreak of monsters in the middle of the city and they could create havoc, taking many precious lives. He then receives a call from Seo, who asks for help with dungeon quests. So he asks for the D-class dungeon in Gangnam as it is the only one owned by the association. He manages to convince Sang-hui to the dungeon expedition and sets the time for the next morning. The status window shows the remaining time of 29 hours and 10 minutes. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends.